Good afternoon, everyone, or morning or evening, as the case may be, and welcome to the 5th week of the Maestro 11 webinar series. My name is Robert Slattery, and I'm a member of the Maestro User Experience team, who's worked on the redesign of the interface for Maestro 11. And today I'm joined by my colleague Laura Beck, who's also a member of the team and might be familiar to those who have been attending the other webinars. And she'll be controlling Maestro during today's presentation and, of course, chiming in with any notes or tips for additional functionality. For those just joining either this week for the first time or maybe haven't been in a couple weeks, the Maestro 11 webinar series is designed each week to highlight a particular area of the new version of Maestro, currently in beta, and provide a demonstration of some of the tools related to that area. Each of the webinar videos that we'll be having on our weekly seminar are all recorded and will be posted on the website, along with some notes and additional training videos that's been put together by our educational teams and also in conjunction with our marketing teams. Last week, the very same Laura Beck joining us today gave a great talk on the Workspace Navigator, which you can see on screen from this slide is over on the left of the screen, which contains the entry list, mini project table tool, and below it the new structure hierarchy, which allows users to view and adjust objects within the workspace kind of at a finer level of granularity than we've ever offered before. Today's discussion session is to discuss how to easily analyze, visualize, and kind of interact with auxiliary objects in the workspace, which is all contained in the Workspace configuration toolbar located at the bottom of the screen. So we'll be discussing kind of what's in the status bar at the bottom, as well as these little blue buttons that you'll see on screen, which allows you to toggle the visibility of, for example, surfaces, ribbons, interactions, annotations that you put in the workspace temporarily. And also we'll talk about a panel that we have, the Workspace configuration panel, which kind of lays out all the ways you can customize your Maestro interface, both within the workspace and the layout of Maestro itself. We feel that customizing and returning and saving particular visualizations and setups is easier than ever in Maestro 11, and we think that there's more of an opportunity to be comfortable and to preserve kind of your working situation or to return to it again later on, while you're working in a project, perhaps if you've gone off and done other things and want to return back to a particular checkpoint in your project that you're used to. So while we have this slide up, we'll just kind of review the last couple of weeks what we've been talking about. The new Maestro 11 interface has three main areas. So the selection toolbar at the top, which has some objects for selection, fitting, styling, building, the task tool, which was a couple weeks ago webinar, which has all the applications and tasks and secondary panels that are accessible through Maestro. The second area is the Workspace Navigator, which was last week's webinar. If you missed it, you can always catch the recording, which is the left area, as mentioned. It contains the entry list and the new structure hierarchy. And then down at the bottom is what we'll be talking about today, which is the Workspace configuration toolbar, as mentioned. And it allows you to find auxiliary information and tools and kind of information as you're using Maestro. This will update based on whether or not things are available in the workspace. So we can fire up Maestro, and I believe Lori could probably take control at this point. We have a project set up already within Maestro. That'll be a good example kind of for going through these tools today. Excellent, great.
Okay.
Looks good. So the Workspace configuration toolbar at the bottom of the screen has three main sections, and the first is to the left, this little status area, and we'll kind of go through each of these in depth. The second area is off to the right. Both the second and third area were these little blue, right now they're faded down, these little blue objects. You can see Laura's cursor, and also this little plus sign, which I alluded to before, which you might want to pop open for a second just to see kind of here's all the objects in Maestro and the ways you can adjust the layout or turn on and off tools, which prior to Maestro 11 might have been disparate across different toolbars in different locations. And one of the things that we wanted to do in Maestro 11, one of our goals is to group consistent functionality in the same place. So now you know that just as we've done with our toolboxes before, the structure hierarchy of the task tool, we've tried to put everything that's related to each other in the same area. And when it comes to workspace configuration, this means that you'll be able to turn on and off any of the information in the workspace, for example, the title of the workspace there in the top left, or in the bottom left, the little 2D view. And all this will be in the same place. So you know that perhaps you're not familiar with everything Maestro has to offer, but you know that, well, if I have something that might be related to viewing in the workspace, then it's probably either in this bottom right corner or this plus button or in a couple limited other areas rather than having to go around and explore all of Maestro to find what you might need. So we'll start with the first area in that bottom left. And this is actually split up into two different areas. So on the left, furthest to the left, you'll see two lines, and they say selected and displayed. So whenever atoms and residues are selected in the workspace, you'll see that it'll light up blue and tell you how many atoms you selected. So currently Laura has 29 atoms across 2 residues that are selected. In the second row, there's a count of all the displayed atoms within the workspace relative to the total number. So we know right now that all of our atoms are displayed, but we'll hide a few of them. For example, just hiding the hydrogens. Now we see that of the displayed atoms, there's 3,200, 5,300 roughly, but all the residues are still visible, so 334, 334, because we only removed the hydrogens. Now, Laura currently has the cursor hovering just over an empty space in the background. And when the empty space, when the cursor is in an empty space and there's no selection, you'll see that there's a contents area which gives you a summary of everything in the workspace. For example, the total number of atoms, the total number of residues, chains, molecules, charge, and entries. And these won't change based on your selection, just because you want to be able to step out and see kind of an overall view as to what is totally in the workspace. Now, if you go to hover over a highlighted atom, you'll notice that that area gets replaced here in this kind of infographic, simply table form. So you'll notice, first off, that the big letter there, since we're hovering over an oxygen, has a big O. And then also a superscript on that, because it's negatively charged, will have a 1 minus. So you can quickly check to see whether or not an atom's charged or what the element type is. And then to the right of that, you can get the atom number, the residue name and number, the chain that it's in, and also the entry. So the entry, for example, is very useful if you have multiple structures in the workspace and you're just moving your cursor around. You want to know what atom is associated with which particular entry. And these all update kind of with the new predictive highlighting mechanism. And Laura, feel free to chime in if you think there's anything we've missed about hovering over atoms there.
No, I think we've covered it. I would point out that the reason we use the 1 with the minus, even though that's not standard, is just to make it more visible. 1 plus 1 minus is not standard chemical notation, but it was just a little too hard to see this small plus and minus.
So next we'll move into that second area, which is the toggles for toggling auxiliary information, the little circles there in the bottom right. So once you've added some features to your structure via the style toolbox or the favorites bar or any other tool, you can control the visibility of these features by toggling on the icons in the rightmost section of the footer. And this means that once you've added a label or you've added ribbons or you've added surfaces in the workspace, you can kind of control their visibility or, for particular instances, be able to get additional functionality which you can then explore. And we'll look at that in particular with measurements and interactions. So these toggles turn on automatically whenever a new item of that type is added or an existing item is modified, so you can see the changes. So since Laura just added labels with the element name and number to each of the atoms, now we have all the way on the bottom right, the furthest left, a little label that allows you in one click just to toggle on and off all your labels. As we were just saying, so now we've created an object, we've added labels, and we have a little blue button that lights up in the bottom right corner, and you can toggle that on and off. And this is persistent across entries. So if I'm on one entry and I have some labels and go to another entry, all the labels will automatically be visible. And if I turn them off in one and switch to the other, it's kind of a global mute toggle, but when you turn them back on, they'll all be there in the same place that you had them before. So you don't have to go back and delete labels or re-customize them or recreate them. And along with labels, this also works with writing in a custom caption or a highlight, which are two other features in Maestro that we're currently improving in Maestro 11. But basically, that little label toggle will turn on and off any sort of text that you can either put in or is automatically generated by any of the panels in Maestro. So we can move on to measurements, which is the second button. So you can notice, first of all, in this little favorites toolbar that we talked about along with the task tool last week's webinar, there's one of the default favorites is measure. So when I click on measure, I can get into this little banner mode which says pick atoms to measure, and distance is selected by default. So we pick 2 atoms and we create a distance measurement between them. And then when I'm happy with that, or okay, great, this is great, yeah, we can make an angle as well. Which will sequentially pick between any 3 atoms, and between any 4 atoms, we can create a dihedral angle. And anytime any single measurement's created, it'll light up, the little measurement ruler will light up in the bottom right corner, and we can click done to save these. And now we can, first of all, toggle them on and off while still preserving them, so we can turn them off, have them show back up if we want to hide them temporarily. And you'll also notice that when you hover over the ruler, that there's a little blue dot, dot, dot above it. And when we click that, we have what used to be kind of a transposition of the old measurements panel, which you might be familiar with, but there's a table of all the measurements that we have in the workspace. And this table has different tabs based on the types of measurements. So now we can see all the dihedral measurements that you made, all the distance measurements or angle measurements. To review a measurement within this table, you can, for example, double-click on one and it'll fit right to it. Or you can right-click on a particular row and you'll be able to delete it, or you can fit it that way. Or you can be able to create a property which will add to your project table that particular distance. Once we have workspaces in, or once we have measurements within the workspace, we could fit to any particular angle. And now we can right-click it and be able to adjust that angle or move the measurement just within the workspace. So Laura can demo that. If we grab a distance, we'll now be in kind of an editing mode where you can just drag with your cursor to lengthen or shorten the distance. And if you have a particular distance in mind that you're familiar with, you can right-click on a measurement and go to set distance and then type in any arbitrary distance that you'd like. There are a couple additional tools within that pop-up. Oh, I'm sorry, Laura, within the dot, dot, dot measurements panel. In the top right, there's an arrow for being able to clear all your measurements or all your angles. And then also there's a little ruler with a plus that quickly can let you make another measurement. So if I click on that, it's kind of a shortcut the same way that the measurement favorite toolbar puts you back into measurement banner mode. So the third toggle, oh, and actually, Laura, you might want to mention how you can right-click on a particular bonded atom and be able to create a measurement just from there. And in the next version of Maestro, in the 16.3 version, you'll be able to arbitrarily right-click any area. Right now, you can only right-click and measure bonded atoms, but any atom in space you can connect once 2016.3 is available, and of course in the official release. So the third toggle down in the bottom right corner is the surfaces toggle. So this allows you to, for example, set up a bunch of surfaces. So we can set up a binding site surface by using the quick select common object menu to select binding site, and then you can go to the style menu and click in the top right, little plus surface, add molecular surface, and that'll make the open surface one of two that Laura just made actually. And now, once I have a couple surfaces in the workspace, we can right-click and edit the color of them, which is a new feature in Maestro 11. We can change the transparency very quickly. We can change it to mesh or dot or a different style. And once we have these in the workspace, you'll notice also that the blue surface circle lights up in the bottom right corner, and now we can toggle this on and off to hide and show all the surfaces. So say you have a surface that's obstructing your view and you want to hide it for a second to get bound to your regular structure, you can hide and show it just kind of in one button without having to set these up again. Now in the entry list, you'll also notice that there is a little S icon square in the entry that we're looking at here, and now I can right click or click on that, and you'll see that all of the surfaces, the two that were available, can be toggled on. So if I have all the surfaces toggled on within the workspace, and then I want to individually select them, we can hide them just through this little menu. So why don't we hide just the binding site surface and then the ligand surface separately. So you have the global toggle and then also the local toggle without having to go through the deeper surface management panels. And this is convenient if you're in the middle of something, want to take a screenshot or want to show a colleague a particular view and then get back to what you were doing. You can build up a bunch of visualizations, be able to hide them temporarily, and then return to them. Fourth toggle is now the ribbon toggle. So once we add ribbons via the style toolbox, you'll notice that ribbons light up. And we can turn these on and off very quickly without having to delete them and reconstruct them. So if you had a particular layout of you had chain A was one color and chain B was another color, and you set up around a particular helix a set of styles, this is a single chain protein, so we won't be able to do it on chain base, but on selection, being able to edit the colors of a particular ribbon. You can make these changes and then be able to hide all your ribbons and then return to them in the state that they were last left. So what we want to try to do is make it so that you can come and go from your particular customization very easily in Maestro 11. And if we hide, for example, this kind of shows the toggles in action. If we hide part of the ribbon, so we can hide part of the ribbon via the toolbox, and then add them back in, all of the ribbon toggle will be shown again. So now, once we make any change, positive or negative, to, for example, ribbons or surfaces or measurements, all of them will become visible again, which kind of signifies that something's been changed. You might want to review it and make sure that whatever action you took is still available. The final button over there before the plus is a one-click button for showing and hiding interactions. So you can see that around the ligand we have pi-pi interaction, and we can actually pop up the interactions toggle and kind of review exactly what we have here. So we have one overall global toggle at the actual toolbar to turn everything on and off, but what that actually does is turn on and off whatever settings you had set up. So say you didn't want to ever view non-covalent bonds or pi interactions, you can have this set up in a custom way and then have a global level toggle to control in one click, but in 2 clicks you can get more specific and be able to show any additional sub-functionality. And then once an interaction type is on, there's a couple other things you can do with it. The first one is you'll notice there's these little color chips next to it. And if I click on the yellow hydrogen bond color chip, it'll pull up the preferences, which you can now adjust. Okay, maybe you wanted your hydrogen bonds to be pink because you were using a different color, yellow, for something else, and you want to stand out. You're able just to quickly adjust it there, and then you'll notice that when you open back up the panel, everything will take your new colors and also update the workspace. So now our hydrogen bonds are pink. The other nice function here is that the menu to the right, where it says ligand receptor, will tell you the interactions between whatever objects. So right now, by default, we're looking at hydrogen bonds between the ligand and the receptor, but we can do it just within the ligand itself, or for everything. We can look at in the entire structure, all the non-covalent bonds, or what we can do is in there's one other option called Other, which pops up a little dialog, which allows you to define a custom set, say between two molecules. Here, our two molecules are ligand and receptor, so it would be the same as just selecting ligand receptor, but you can obviously imagine if you had multiple molecules in the workspace, or at any other level, just between particular residues, just between particular chains, any sort of combination, you can custom define it, and then there'll be a little dot, dot, dot box next to it, which reloads that panel. So as mentioned, one of the goals of Maestro 11 is to group similar functionality, and we've consolidated all these workspace tools. Kind of all the auxiliary objects can now be toggled by those 5 little blue circles. And here, what we want to do is be able to turn on and off in this plus button everything else available in the workspace. So if you click the plus button in the far right footer, we open up the workspace configuration panel. And this is set up into 3 areas. The top area is the workspace toggles. And these involve more scientific auxiliary objects. So for example, if in the PDB structure you had secondary coordinates, which here are classified as alternate positions, which isn't actually available in 1KV1, we do have a structure that does have them. You'll notice that there are these kind of dotted area which shows a different PDB coordinate, and then we can toggle this on and off to see, a different occupancy if it's available. And not every one of your structures has it, but sometimes, users have wondered kind of what's this dotted line structure because they're actually not sure that their PDB that they imported had this additional information. But that can be controlled through the workspace config toggles. So we can return back to 1KV1 and look at a couple of the other toggles. If we want to display the coordinate axes, that'll put an axis in the bottom left, maybe an X, Y, Z coordinate. In the bottom left of the screen, you can see as you're rotating, it'll tell you kind of the direction of the axes that are considered in Maestro and how Maestro reads their global axes. The unit cell, you'll have to zoom out for this, but it'll put a bounding box kind of around the structure based on the crystallographic dimensions. Crystal mates show kind of possible repeating interacting units from the PDB. And since we can, so there's a secondary option here. So now that we turn on crystal mates, right to the right of it, and it's kind of jammed there, but you can click on a little arrow, which allows you to set the radius of it. So basically, the way this configuration panel works is that once we turn on something, so we want to turn on the crystal mates, we know that if crystal mates have different options, it'll give you that option in the little drop-down. So we know that's on. The default was 4 angstroms, but we have 4, 6, 8, 10, or all. And then once we turn it off, that'll become disabled, but it'll keep it for the next time you turn it back on. So if I have it off, turn it back on, I want to leave the crystal mates that were available before. A couple other ones, this wouldn't have a dipole, I'm pretty sure, but if it did, be able to toggle on off there, and polyhedrons, which is something that we run into more in our material science users, will be able to toggle there as well. The second area is for special tools that are in designated areas around the workspace. So the first one is the clipping planes, which will be obscured by our workspace config here. But this gives an overhead top-down view of how far the camera cuts through the structure. So when you're adjusting your camera view, if you want to say you want to get the ligand, just the view around the ligand without everything, without the whole protein being visible, you can kind of zoom into it and then also use the clipping planes to be able to narrow in the view around that area without having the entire structure obscuring your view. And most of these are also available, nearly all are available through the window menu. So you can just always use the regular top menu, which has clipping planes right there. The status bar toggle will not actually be in the official release because you'll notice that this will make the footer disappear temporarily. But if you happen to run into this, if you happen to inadvertently click the status bar, I just want to bring this up. You can get this back by going through the window menu, and the status bar is still there. So that'll be replaced on one of our newer toggles for a newer tool that we have in the next release. The next one is the 2D overlay, which gives a 2D snapshot of a small molecule, and here, in this case, the ligand, and you can right-click that and get right to the 2D sketcher or interaction diagram when it's available. The workspace feedback, here is the term of the workspace properties, is the title of the workspace. So you'll notice that as Laura toggles that on and off, in the top left, you can see the 1kV1 area will disappear and reappear. Now, if it's disappeared, you also don't have to go to the workspace config panel because you can get a little preview of what's in the workspace without actually permanently keeping it. So she can slide out and it'll go away, but if I want to permanently keep it, I can move to the top right corner, click it, it will stay, and then I can click it again if I want to be able to customize this. And this is a new feature in Maestro 11, which is pretty cool, and we talk about this a couple webinars from now, but Laura can get kind of a quick preview that you can add a couple properties and rearrange them and very simply be able to have a title for your workspace. We also have the command input area, which pops up a little bar at the bottom where you can write in some Maestro commands. And you can start typing, and there's an auto-complete. So it'll give you kind of possible commands that you might want to be able to use, or it'll kind of guide you along typing through. And you can use the up and down arrows, the up arrow to go to previous command, like you might be familiar with in a terminal or shell scripting program. And there's one more object in the workspace gadget area, the sequence viewer, which will also come up on the footer, and that interacts with the selection in the workspace. And it'll give you the amino acid sequence of the protein available, and that all interacts with the structure hierarchy on the left, the workspace itself, the structure hierarchy on the left, the sequence viewer on the bottom, and the workspace itself all work interactively together and all synced up, so any selection that you make in one is going to be automatically selected in the other. The third section is the background section, and there's a few things we can do here which has to do just with the overall viewing of the workspace. The first that we'll do is just coloring, simply changing the background of the colors. So right now we have black. We have a couple pre-standard colors, so white's great for if you want to take publication. There's a couple grays that are good just for seeing contrast depending on the structure that you're looking at, and a nice dark navy blue. And then also there's a little pencil all the way to the right, which allows you to just quickly pick any color that you want, and you can save these to a little grid, the Add Custom Color grid. So I like that particular navy. Save that, and it'll be able to be restored. So next time you come in, if you have any particular sets of colors that you like, you can find them easily. So two more things in this background section is tiling workspace. So for tile workspace to work, we'll want to have two entries included. So once we have two entries included in the workspace, they happen to be the same one here, so they're going to be directly overlaid. But we can use the tiling function to lay out multiple structures within the workspace layout. And there's also a little button, so this will give you kind of a grid view of everything that's included. And you'll notice that there's a little button link which has a circle that's toggled on right now. And that means that whenever Laura's doing a rotation or zoom within the workspace, it'll happen to all of the tiles because all the tiles are linked to the same camera. Now, if we turn that off, now it only works on whatever tile that you're working in. So the other one can stay the same, and then the one you're interacting with, you'll notice has a little light box around it to kind of tell you that's the one that's active, and then it'll only be controlled for that tile. And there's a couple options in the right-click menu that you can kind of interact So if I have a zoom that's set up in one, and I want to see the same view in the other tile, I can right-click and say, apply that zoom. Or if I'm rotated and all set up in a particular different way, I can apply the whole entire view. And that'll apply them to both. And if you want to change the ordering of the tiles, what you do is in the banner it says pick a tile to move and then pick a new tile for its new location. So you'll see once you pick one it turns yellow, and then there's this bar that says kind of where you'll be able to drop it. A little pink line says it'll go in this area. So we can jump out of tiling view and take a look at stereo. So if you're someone that uses 3D glasses, for example, we have a quick way to turn on and off the stereo view. You can go to anaglyph and you'll be able to see an anaglyph. It'll probably take a second to load. But you'll notice that cyan red offsetting 3D structure, which looks great in 3D glasses. And then also next to those options, if you want to get deeper into your 3D options, you can click the little dot, dot, dot next to it, and that'll bring up the old appearance panel, which is also available through the Workspace top menu, the Workspace appearance menu. This one, because we're visiting it from the 3D area, it'll automatically be started at the 3D toggle. And Laura, feel free to chime in anything else, but I think that's kind of an overview of the status bar, the Workspace toggles, and then the Workspace configuration panel. I don't know if there's any really cool tricks that I missed out that you want to make sure everyone hears about.
No, I think you covered everything.